My name is Jennifer. I'm a grateful member of GreySheeters Anonymous. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here with you all this morning. I came to GreySheet in 1987. I was 27 years old. I'm 63 now. And I have been abstinent since March 12th, 2004. So there was a big break between my first and my second abstinence. My first abstinence lasted a year and a half, and then I had a 16-year relapse. So I am back 19 years as of March 12th. And what I do today is what I did on day one. I weigh and measure my food. I call my sponsor. I go to meetings. I make phone calls. I read the big book. I work the steps, and I have a relationship with my higher power today, whom I choose to call God. And what brought me to GreySheet is that I was out of control with my eating. I could not stop eating. And that had been true ever since I was a little girl. I learned I was a big eater as a child, but I didn't have a problem with the food. But when I turned 10 or 11 years old, my body started to change and I started to gain weight. And I found out that I could not stop eating no matter what I did. So I just got heavy. I was a heavy girl. I was a heavy teenager, not that heavy, maybe 10 pounds, not that heavy, but enough that I was uncomfortable. And I also, more than the weight, I couldn't control the food. So at dinner time, I would want 2 slices of the dessert, and my mother would say, "Don't do that." And I couldn't not do that. I had to have that second piece. Interestingly enough, I went to Mexico City when I was 15 to live with a family there, and then their daughter came and lived with me in Boston. And when I was in Mexico City, it was the only time in my life where I could eat the way I wanted to. The family was all fat. I remember one of the nicknames for the son in the family was Gordo. And they were all really fat and really happy, and they eat whatever they wanted to eat. We had one day where we just ate sweets. It was like a Sunday, and all they did was eat pastry all day. I thought I was in heaven. We also would go to the cabinet and take out the little packages of wiggly dessert, and we would just eat it right out of the package. That's also where I found cajeta. And I just thought cajeta was most beautiful dessert in the entire world. So that was my experience in Mexico City. It was amazing. But then I came back to Massachusetts, and it was deprive, judgment. And it was not okay in my family to be fat. You could not be fat. So I restricted my food as a teenager. I did go on one diet, which was kind of like GreySheet, and I lost that 10 pounds. But as soon as I started eating the food again that I avoided, I gained the weight back. In college, I joined a sport. I'm not an athlete, but I joined the sport, and I was able to eat a lot because of the sport. I was exercising very heavily. So I was a little bit heavy in college too. But when I really started to get out of control was in my 20s, when I was living in an apartment with other people. Because I could eat their food, I could eat my food. Nobody was watching me. And I started to get really desperate. And just about that time, I met my current husband, and he knew about he didn't know about GreySheet. He knew about Overeaters Anonymous. But we lived in Cambridge. So Cambridge did GreySheet. They had broken away from OA in 1977. So there was a good community in Cambridge of GreySheeters in 1987. So I came into the room and I heard the message that all of you know, which is that we're allergic to sugar, grains, and carbohydrates. And just taking a little bit is going to cause us to not be able to stop. We're going to just keep eating and eating and eating. And I got a sponsor and I got abstinent, and my wedding was abstinent. I had a beautiful abstinent year and a half. And then I was hospitalized and I lost my abstinence in the hospital. And when I came out of the hospital, it's as though GreySheet didn't exist for me anymore. I was not going to go back. So I tried to do it on my own. And eventually I gained over 100 pounds. So when I came back to GreySheet, I was 50 pounds more than I am now. So I've been sustaining a 50-pound weight loss for 19 years. So for 19 years, I've been the same weight. And it only took me 6 months to lose that weight. I had 4 children. I was very busy. So I had 50 pounds to lose. And in 6 months, I lost that 50 pounds. And I've been able to keep that off ever since. And what that means is my health is better. I have better relationships with my family. I was able to go back to school and become a professional. And I now work doing work that's valuable to me and enjoyable. I have worked the steps and I've become, I believe I've become more serene and, easier to be with. And I stay really, really close to the GreySheet program. So what does that look like? Well, every day I get up, I have my breakfast, and I call my sponsor right after breakfast. I usually get on a meeting in the morning as well. And what do I tell my sponsor? Well, I tell my sponsor what I'm eating, but I also talk to my sponsor about what's getting in my way. So if I'm having difficulty at work or difficulty with my husband, or, something good is happening, I'm going to a baby naming or there's a wedding, I talk to my sponsor. And the question I always have is, how am I going to stay abstinent and do this? And the answer is, if I can stay abstinent, then I can do it. But if I can't stay abstinent, then I don't do it. A lot of things had to change in my life when I got abstinent 19 years ago. I was very, very busy, very overbooked. And I used to be, every moment I was doing something. And that was not compatible with my abstinence. And I find that even today, I have to stop and think, do you want to do that? Or do you want to stay abstinent? And the answer is always, I would choose abstinence. So exactly today, I'm thinking about wanting to join a class that's going to meet every Tuesday morning for 3 months. And right now is not a good time for me to be taking a class. I have a lot of things going on already. And that class I can take another time. I don't have to take it now. And also Passover is this coming week, and that requires a lot of work in the kitchen, not just cooking, but also cleaning and buying special foods for Passover. And I know that this is not the right time to take this class. I want to take this class. It's a hobby of mine that I'd like to study more. But if I want to take time for my abstinence, this is not going to be a good thing. So those are kind of like the decisions I have to make in my everyday life to protect my abstinence. One of the other things that's happened in my abstinence is I've begun to realize that I have other issues in my life besides the food. And there are 12-step programs for a lot of those issues. So I'm a member of some other fellowships now as well. And that's been really rewarding. Making phone calls is really helpful to me. I make at least 3 phone calls a day. And what I do when I make the phone call is just say, how are you? What's going on for you today? And then it's my turn and I tell the person what's going on for me today. And sometimes the calls are very short. Sometimes it's just have a great day, no matter what. But with every call I make, I build that abstinent muscle that if I feel like eating or I have an emergency, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a phone call and I'm going to reach out to another GreySheeter. So there are some people I'm very close to, like we've become friends. Some people I'm friends with that I've never met. They live in countries or in parts of the United States that I've never been to. Sometimes I've actually met those people when I travel to those cities. But the phone calls are really important for me. Another thing that's important are meetings. I get to at least 3 meetings a week. And when I'm on that meeting, that's a real meeting for me. That's not like listening in the background. That's a meeting where I speak up, I share, tell my, do whatever I can do to be present on that meeting. So it's not in the background for me. It's like I'm present. And usually I get on phone meetings. I don't get on Zoom meetings too much. This is kind of rare for me, but I usually get on the 7 a.m. Eastern phone bridge almost every day. And then working the steps. Every day I ask myself, how can I do God's will? What is God's will for me today? And I actually think about that all through the day. What does God want for me today? And if I make a mistake and I need to make an amends that's appropriate, I'll make an amends. Recently, I did something at work which I felt like I shouldn't have done. And when I spoke to the person again, she said, and I apologized. She said, "Oh, I've been thinking about that all week. I'm so glad you said something." And that's because of the 12 steps that I did that. And my relationship with a higher power, like I said, I'm asking myself constantly, what would higher power have me do? And I also pray and meditate. And I go once a week to the synagogue to pray. And then I pray on and off all during the day whenever I feel called to pray. And meditation, I do long meditation, but I also do really short meditation where I just bring myself back down to a calm state of mind and just breathe for a couple of minutes. So those are some of the strategies, the tools that I use to stay abstinent. Let me talk a little bit about the food. The food for me is very central to this program. It has to taste good. It has to be delicious, but it doesn't have to be complicated. So some of my favorite foods are things you can get in the, put in the freezer and just steam or defrost. Some of my foods are crunchy. Some of them are salty. Some of them are, different textures. And I like to have a little bit at every meal, like something different at every meal. I have gained weight in abstinence. I've had to go on a diet in abstinence. And that means that, some foods that are heavier than others, I avoid those foods. And even today, I'm very careful about my weight because, I'm in my 60s and it's easy for me to gain weight. I do exercise. I go to the gym every day during the week. And then on the weekends, I walk. And I really enjoy the exercise. I do exercise that I like to do, not that I have to do. So going to the gym is a pleasure. And I do like to walk outside. So walking on the weekends is really nice. And I've had the privilege of walking with Marcella, which was delightful. And then I guess the other piece of my program is, let's see, what else can I tell you about the way I work my program? Well, I guess that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I do to stay abstinent. Oh, I do service too. I do service. I've been trained to be a moderator, and recently I took on a position as a leader. And I've been doing service for a long time in GreySheet, and I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend picking up a service position. So yeah, let me get back to today and what I was saying before about getting ready for Passover. I have a lot of things I like to do. I have hobbies that are really important to me, but right now I need to be putting everything aside so that I can get ready for Passover. And instead of feeling upset about that or angry, I'm just looking at it as another thing to do between my meals. And yes, cleaning the oven and bringing up Passover dishes. It's not like the most fun thing in the world, but it's what I need to do between the meals today. And fortunately, we have 3 meals a day. And if I'm getting a little irritable about the hard work, I can just fantasize about my next meal. And I do a lot of fantasizing about my next meal. Even sometimes when I'm eating my meal, I'm fantasizing about the next meal. So I am really, the food is really important to me, really important to me. I'm in remission from this disease, but I still love to eat. And that's one of the beauties of GreySheet is that, we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to have delicious food. We're allowed to think about our food. We can have the biggest and the best. And that's such a gift to me. Now, sometimes I wish I had more food. Sometimes the meal will end and I say to myself, I could do that again. I could have 3 more of those meals and I would still be hungry or still want the food. That's just the way I am. I'm an addict with food. It's my primary addiction. It's my only substance addiction. And, it's been like that all my life. And I don't think that will ever change. Recently, I was at a funeral, unfortunately, for my mother-in-law, and we went out to dinner. So I guess I could talk about going out to dinner. So this was like a disaster meal, total disaster meal. I brought my backup, but at the last moment, I thought, oh, I'll try to eat at the restaurant. And it just did not work very well. I needed to go get my fat at a supermarket. I mean, fortunately, there was a supermarket across the street from the restaurant. It was just awful. So the rest of the time at the funeral, I ate my backup. And my backup isn't the best meal, but it's still abstinent. And then I got to come back to my kitchen. And then like the next day, I went down to New York City to help my mother because she's moving out of an apartment there. And that was, again, a lot of very simple backup type food in her apartment. And it was a lot of work. I was packing up her apartment, packing up the car, helping her. But I can do those things today because I'm abstinent, and I can be abstinent and do those things. So, yeah, sometimes it's not easy, but it's always better than eating, because when I came back this time, I was really beaten. I never want to feel that feeling again when I came back. That was a very bad place to be. I was not just overweight, but I was really crazy. My mind was really, really crazy. And I don't ever want to go back there, no matter how hard it is to weigh and measure, no matter how many meals I want to eat. Staying abstinent has got to be and is the most important thing in my life today. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't end with some of the positives. I think I said that I'm working in a field that I like, but I didn't say that I now have 3 grandchildren. And to be able to show up for these little children, and on Friday, I sent them all clothes for Passover, like just to do the little things like that, just the little things that we do as parents, grandparents, friends, children. Just to do those little things is so wonderful. I used to think everything had to be big and, I used to think everything had to be big and do many things at once in order to be satisfactory. Now I realize, no, you can just go to the store, pick up clothes for the grandchildren, put them in an envelope and mail them. And that's good enough. You don't have to buy the biggest and the best for them. You know, the biggest and the best, that's the food, but everything else can just be okay. And it reminds me of a saying that we used to have in Cambridge, which was, weigh and measure with an iron fist, but wear your abstinence like a loose garment. Weigh and measure with an iron fist and wear your abstinence like a loose garment. And that's what I feel like today. I feel like the weighing and measuring, that's the core of my life, and everything else kind of falls around that. So I think with that, I'm going to pass, giving other people a chance to share. I don't know if I'll be able to understand them, Marcella, because I'm not a Spanish speaker, but I'm going to close out my video and I'll still be here listening. Thank you.